see the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.
My name is Jiang Xueqin. I am the deputy principal of a high school in Beijing called Peking University High School. We're affiliated with the university, Peking University. I was born in China, but I grew up in Toronto, Canada, and for my undergraduate, I was at Yale College. And after graduating in 1999, I've been working in China since then in different capacities. First as a high school teacher, and then as a journalist, a documentary filmmaker, and now for the past 4 years, I've been working in study abroad education in China.
So I just brought up your school here, the Peking University High School.
That's right.
I'm bringing up the web page here, and so what is this school about?
Right. So the high school itself was founded in 1960 as a lab school for Peking University. So a lot of the professors got their training here in the high school, and a lot of the children of professors sent their children here. And so since 1960, this has been very much an innovative, progressive high school in China. So a lot of top scientists have graduated from here, a lot of top thinkers. One of China's most famous entrepreneurs, his name is Wang Yan, and he is founder of an internet portal called Sina.com. They're very famous for the Twitter site called Sina Weibo, and he's a graduate of this high school. So a lot of very famous scientists, very famous entrepreneurs graduate from this high school. And what makes this high school very interesting is the sort of community, the sort of interactions between the teachers and the students. It's very much a very nurturing and encouraging environment. So in 2010, we started a new department of this high school called the International Division. Since about 2005, 2006, more and more Chinese students were applying to study in the United States. This has, study abroad has been in China since about the mid-90s, but primarily these are students who didn't do very well in the Chinese system, and so they opted to go to school in Australia and Britain and Canada. About 2005, 2006, America relaxed its visa restrictions against Chinese students. And what we started seeing then were a lot of top students who could have gone to Peking University and Tsinghua University, choosing to go to America instead. And this trend has only accelerated since then. So today you have about 160,000 Chinese students right now studying on the American campus.
Wow.
And you have entire classes opting out of the Chinese system and choosing to go to America instead. So this has become a huge trend in China. And so we started in 2010 to meet student demand, but more as an experiment, more as a lab within a lab school to see what was possible in terms of education reform in China.
Okay, yeah, so if I could just interrupt here, is the way we connected is that you've created a proposal for the competition, the Shoka competition for activating empathy, how to promote empathy in the schools. And since you're a very progressive school, I imagine that's why that empathy tends to be part of progressive schools.
Right.
And so can you tell me about your proposal that you did for the Ashoka competition?
Right. Empathy itself is not a very well-known concept in China. In fact, there's actually no Chinese word for empathy. We've been trying for the past 2 years trying to translate the word, and it's very hard to translate. I mean, there's a word for sympathy, which is the same feeling. Empathy isn't really the same thing. And so, I mean, for the past few years, there's this huge debate right now in China. There's a consensus that the Chinese system doesn't work. And so one question that Chinese like to ask is, why has China not produced a Nobel Prize winner in the sciences? Why doesn't China produce innovative entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates? And I think that the key here, and this is something that hasn't been discussed in China, is I think the key is empathy. I think creativity and empathy are directly linked. Empathy leads to creativity. So here we are trying to educate China's next generation of creative thinkers, the entrepreneurs, the writers, the scientists, the educators that are going to lead China into the 21st century. And for us, the fundamental essence has to be empathy, because empathy is the basis for collaboration, of course, understanding group dynamic and understanding the need to work with others, but also communication. Effective communication requires understanding the viewpoint of the other person, but also I believe very strongly in creativity, in understanding yourself and understanding different people. And it's this constant negotiation with who you are and with what the world demands that will lead to new ideas.
Oh, so you're saying that in China, the country feels that its education system is not producing maybe the top people or the most creative people, and you're really feeling that empathy is this foundation for creativity, uh, and maybe something that China needs to implement countrywide.
Yeah,
If
I mean, I mean, right now in China, there's a fundamental shift in the society. For the past 20, 30 years, China was very much a manufacturing-based economy. So, a very blunt way of saying this is that China was a sweatshop to the world. It was manufacturing goods in its Pearl River Delta region and then exporting them elsewhere. So, all the innovation was happening elsewhere, but all the manufacturing, labor-intensive work was happening within China. And so that was fine for 20, 30 years because China was an agricultural society, and to transfer to an industrial society mean a rapid increase in wealth. And you're talking about 8 to 10% GDP growth a year, and so you had massive wealth generation because of the shift from an agricultural-based society to a manufacturing-based society. And if you're a manufacturing-based society, then what you need are literate workers who are able to execute simple tasks. And that's what the Chinese system is very good at doing. It's very good at producing disciplined, focused individuals who can read and write. And the way it does that is by using standardized examinations to sort of filter out who succeeds and who fails. And this sort of motivation system works fine. But what we're finding now is that China cannot shift from a manufacturing-based economy into a knowledge-based economy because of this education system. Students are not required to think for themselves. They have absolutely no motivation to study outside the school system. So, about 10 years ago, Richard Florida wrote this book called The Rise of the Creative Class, about individuals who are constantly learning, who are constantly challenging themselves, who learn for the sake of learning. Daniel Pink wrote this book called Drive, which talks about motivation 3.0, which is the intrinsic drive, the motivation from within to improve yourself, and that's very much what China lacks right now. And because of that, China cannot progress as a society and as an economy. And then so there's this fundamental debate about how China can best transition from a manufacturing-based economy into a knowledge-based economy. And our solution here is empathy. Empathy has to be the fundamental essence of China's shift from a standardized test exam system into a more progressive education system. And so for the past 2 years, we've been really focusing on empathy in our system.
Can I just add, are you focusing specifically on the word empathy? I mean, are you actually using it among the staff and the professors and the students? Are you saying, hey, we need to do empathy, we need to foster empathy? So
Right.
Is it very conscious and explicit like that?
We use the word explicitly, but for us, it's very hard to translate into Chinese, and so there lacks a understanding of the concept here, and so we use different ideas to express the same thing, empathy. So we talk about collaboration, we talk about communication, we talk about group dynamic, we talk about self-learning, we talk about self-understanding, we talk about self-control. These are all fundamental concepts that are related to empathy. So we ourselves don't actually use the term in our communication to parents and to students, but it very much is in the background.
Well, what do you do then? What I'm really looking at is how do we build a culture of empathy? So it's like Ashoka is focused on empathy, creating a culture of empathy with schools. I'm looking at how do we build a culture of empathy within schools, within businesses, within
Yeah.
the home, and a whole societal-wide cultural shift.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in kind of any insights you have, from your school. Like, what are the things you do to, build that culture?
Yes. That's a great question. And my answer is that humans through evolution have been sort of programmed, designed to be individuals with empathy. A culture of empathy is a natural state of
We're
society.
wired for empathy, basically.
Excuse me?
We're wired for empathy just through mirror neurons
Exactly.
and biologically.
I mean, think about this. I mean, like we have families, right? We have friends, we have colleagues. In order to communicate with them, in order to do effectively with them, we need empathy. So empathy is really fundamentally about being a human being. And so the question is, why is it in China? China's not very much a society based on empathy. And why is it in America? You have these Wall Street scandals. And so what's happening in this world that is reducing the level of empathy? And I think a lot of it is our sort of increasing focus on materialistic ends, money and tests. And so, our school is a clear example of this, where our students came in products of the Chinese system, standardized examinations, incentive-based learning. And what we've done here is basically eliminate that culture. And we said, here you've come in to learn to be individuals and to be thinkers. And we don't want short-term goals. Learning is a lifelong process. This is a message that we communicate them all the time. They come in and they think, oh, my job is to do well on the SAT. My job is to do well on the TOEFL and get into a top American school. And so what we say to them is, if you come in here with that sort of attitude, it's the same attitude as in the Chinese system, where you do well on examinations in order to get into top Chinese schools. And that's the reason why many Chinese students lack empathy. Because, and I mean, the science isn't very clear on this, but they've done a lot of experiments to show that people have two centers. There's the altruistic creative center, and there's another utilitarian short-term center. So another way of saying this is that these two centers are mutually exclusive. You can choose to tell students, okay, you're in school to be a better individual, or you can choose to tell the student you're in school to do well on a standardized examination so you can get into a top college. You can choose one or the other. You cannot choose both. And what happens often is that if you use the same message, it's the short-term utilitarian center that overrides the altruistic, moral, creative center. And that's what we've discovered in our program, where by constantly negating the utilitarian drive, the short-term thinking drive, students have become more creative, more empathic, more moral individuals. And that's something that we're extremely proud of. And we constantly reinforce this through, the focus on group dynamic in our classes, on having the kids do group work and telling the kids that, just because you do well on tests does not mean that you're smart. Being smart means the ability to work with different people and to recognize the strengths of other people and how to match your strengths with the strengths of other people to produce something great and lasting and creative. That's what we tell them. Last month, we sent our students to Botswana to do service learning there, to work with AIDS orphans and to work with disabled children. And that obviously was intellectually very challenging. And to shift from one culture to another culture and to adapt, that requires empathy. And so they were able to do that. I mean, we sent two teachers to constantly work with them and help have them process the experience.
So that
But
way is that way. I mean, one way of developing empathy is just kind of meet a lot of people and get a lot of experience. I for example, went traveling around the world. I was like 17 and graduated from high school here. And I traveled for 10 years around the world and just started seeing that people were just like me in the sense that we had that common humanity. So you're saying you're kind of taking the students and getting them to get out into different environments. I mean, Botswana, Africa, and probably
I mean,
poor situations.
We sent our students to Botswana, and they came back to transform. But I think that's 9% of it.
How
but
much?
There's one.
90?
That's about 90%.
Okay.
90% of it. But there's also another very fundamental part here, which is why they go. They're going to meet new people and to expand horizons. I mean, like, if we frame it as, oh, you're going to go because this will look good on your college application, then, they go in with a different motivation, and they would not get as much of experience, and they would come back, not as transformed as they could have been. So again, I think it's very fundamental to tell our students, and to sort of our society, both in China and America, needs to move away from a society that seeks short-term materialistic rewards and goals, and towards a more sort of holistic thinking, a more altruistic society-based sort of thinking. I think America and China right now are both too much focused on the individual, on short-term goals like test scores and money.
So it's the short term, just going for the immediate gratification, the immediate goals, instead of looking at the larger picture, perhaps. And in fact, I think in terms of empathy, is that empathy seems to take a wide space. Awareness is like, if you're like working on a short-term goal, it takes a real focus and a closing of awareness. And empathy seems to take this opening of awareness to take in more. So so I think kind of dynamically, biologically, that kind of overlaps with what you're talking about.
That's right. I think empathy is related to a lot of things. Again, I don't know the neuroscience behind these things, and no one has yet figured it out. But I think empathy, morality, altruism, creativity are all linked together somehow. And I think one reinforces the other.
Well, here's the thing: is what is your definition of empathy? How are you defining it? What's your kind of operating definition?
Right. I mean, empathy, I consider, the technical term is called theory of mind, which basically is the ability to perceive and understand and accept the viewpoints of others that are fundamentally different from yours. It's very easy for us to know what we think and to express what we think. But the ability to sort of sympathize or understand what other people think and to articulate their viewpoint, that's empathy. And that intellectually is, just from an intelligence perspective, the most intellectual thing that a human being can do. The ability to articulate, to sort of basically read another person's mind.
Can I share with you my definition of empathy? That I've looked at a lot of different definitions of empathy and kind of been putting them together, and I've come up with kind of like 4 parts to empathy. And the first part I would call self-empathy. So that's like self-awareness, mindfulness, sensory awareness of the feelings that are within my body. Feeling my own pinching of myself and feeling the sensation. So it's like it's this sensory awareness of what's going on in me from a feeling sensation level. Then there's the mirror neurons, or what I call mirrored empathy, which is as you're watching me and you're seeing these hands kind of flailing around, that your body is mirroring those motions within you, and you can feel that to varying degrees. The more open you are and broader your awareness is, the more you can feel and have that mirrored empathy through the physical process of mirror neurons. Then there's the theory of mind more area, which is what I call imaginative empathy, or sometimes called perspective taking or cognitive empathy. So it's being able to take the position of someone else, see the world, like what is it like from their position, kind of in perspective, and that has more of a cognitive, imaginative quality to it. And then the fourth part is what I would call empathic action. That as we connect at these other levels and are able to see each other and feel each other, that we create action together that is an empathic type of action where there's no barriers to the action. Like, you know, when
Yes.
people are mad at each other and they try to work together, I mean, it's just like terrible. You know, it just doesn't work. But when you're really well connected with someone, then you have this empathic, smooth
That's right.
action.
That's right.
So that's kind of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
working definition that I use.
Yeah. I mean, like, you're really talking about the four stages of empathy, right?
Yeah.
And how they build on each other. The first stage, the second stage, the third stage, the fourth stage. Another framework for understanding this is what educators call the individualization and the socialization process, where you first have to become an individual before you can properly socialize yourself with other people. So yeah. So I mean, I completely I completely agree with that.
Yeah, so it's like you're saying kind of an individual part, which maybe overlaps with self-empathy. You have to be able to be aware of
Exactly.
who you are as a individual,
That's right.
perhaps.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
well, how I'm just really curious is like, I mean, I was in China in 1990, just kind of did a little bit of traveling through there. It was just before the real boom, I think, really started
Yes.
taking off. But you know, for the sense that we get, I think, here in the United States is China is more of an authoritarian, patriarchal kind of a society, and that's very
Yeah.
much is follow the rules. You know, certain people are in charge. You know,
Yes.
it's hierarchical, which is very different model from empathy. Empathy is about
Yes.
feeling everyone for their
Yes.
humanity. And, you
Yes.
know, how do I interact with your humanity and how do you see my humanity?
Yes.
And so it seems like it's to do that kind of a cultural change in China for people to really value empathy. That's quite a cultural shift.
Yeah, I mean, like I think that you really hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's exactly the problem, where there is a hierarchy, where power is distributed unevenly within China, and so the powers that be feel that it is their right to sort of bully the powerless, and that's why we lack a culture of empathy in China. And that's not just the problem with empathy. That's the problem with communication and creativity as well. Where communication, you need equality. I mean, you need to respect and trust the people you're communicating with. And if you don't, then there's no communication. And China lacks communication as well. And creativity is a culture, unique culture of innovation, where you're not afraid to lose face,
Yeah.
where you're not afraid to make mistakes, where you're not afraid to offend your superiors. And these three things, empathy, communication, creativity, they're all related. And China is very much in need of these three things if it is to progress as a society and as a civilization. And you hit the nail on the head, which is fundamentally it's a question of power distribution and respect for everyone, and the political system. I mean, like, fundamentally, yeah. If China is to progress as an economy, as a society, as a people, then it has to fundamentally re-examine its political system and question the sort of effectiveness of it in a 21st century global economy.
So it's really, how do you create that empathy then within society, and how is that movement going in China in terms of, I mean, your school is kind of progressive. It sounds like it's kind of on the cutting edge of this. How does it look at a larger societal level? Are there, like here in the United States, there's businesses that are trying to implement more empathy. I mean, it's not like America is some kind of a paragon of empathy. So it's really a worldwide, shift that needs to happen, it seems to me. But I'm just wondering, are there businesses that are, kind of doing this? Are there other schools? What's the picture in China for empathy, the development of empathy?
I believe this. I believe very strongly that empathy is about being an effective school, an effective business, about being an effective society, which is the ability to channel the creativity and the energy of everyone involved to create something great. You look at companies that treat their employees with respect. Companies like Google and Apple and Facebook, and which basically encourage them to be creative individuals, and they sort of remove what's called scientific management from the equation, where people aren't treated like animals anymore. I mean, these are creative companies that have shown tremendous growth. And I think that any company that employs a culture of empathy effectively will show tremendous growth. And that's just because of the way that Americans have been educated. If you look at the sort of education that really smart Americans receive, they go in the workplace expecting to be treated as equals, expected to be given autonomy and freedom to pursue what they love. And if you look at companies that do that, they thrive. And companies that sort of try to work against that, they suffer. That's what's happening in America, where there are these showcases for empathy. In China right now, the issue is again. There is no word for empathy. There's no understanding of the word empathy in this culture.
What's the closest word in China, in Chinese?
The closest word is sympathy, which is
Okay.
同情, which is a same feeling, which is
Same
not
feeling.
necessarily empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not necessarily empathy.
Yeah. And
So,
compassion, is there
so
a word for compassion? That's similar, but not quite.
yeah, there's a word for compassion, but empathy, it's a very much a technical term with a lot of connotations
Yeah.
that just are not captured in the language. So I mean, what China needs right now is to sort of first be introduced to the concept of empathy, and that's what we're trying to do here, where we're trying to show that if you remove pressure and hierarchy and size testing from the Chinese system, and you focus more on a culture of empathy, students become happier. They become more motivated. They become more creative. They become more driven to learn. They become better at collaborating together. And that's what's happening with our students. So we feel very strongly that first we need a showcase for what is possible within Chinese education reform, what empathy could lead to.
So kind of like a
And
model. You want to model it within your school, so it's like something that others can look at and see.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
Exactly. I think that right now a lot of businesses are willing to discuss empathy because of what Microsoft, what Apple, what Google were able to accomplish. If it weren't for these companies, then I mean, why? Then you would not have that many companies talking about empathy right now.
Yeah.
So right now, our school, I feel very strongly that we're a lab, and we're a showcase for what is possible. And empathy, even though it's not articulated explicitly, it very much is in the blood, the culture of who we are and what we do.
Well, one thing, even in the United States, sometimes empathy is, I mean, it kind of infuses everything. I mean, all human interaction, even if there's a higher, a kind of an authoritarian kind of a relationship, even here, there's still empathy. You can't, it's just kind of we're wired into it, but it's kind of like, how do we
Yeah.
maximize it, right? How do we raise the
Yes.
level of empathy? But it does seem to
Yeah.
be important to have a vocabulary for it. You know what I mean? To
Yeah.
have an explicit vocabulary about, you can have a whole series of other words like individualism or collaboration, but to have a clear vocabulary seems to me to be very important.
It's China is a very different society from America, and I'll give an example where when I walk the street, I'm sort of beeped by a car, and one time I've been hit by a car, and I had the right of way. I was crossing the street and I was hit by a car, and I've actually looked in the eyes of drivers, and when they drive, they don't seem to have awareness of other drivers. They don't seem to have awareness of pedestrians. They feel that I have a car and I can go and do whatever I want.
Right.
It's sort of the culture of mutual respect is not, it doesn't exist in China. It's very much a culture of power and face.
Yeah.
And shame. It's not a culture of empathy. And you're exactly right. Where I mean, when people when Americans are together, there is a culture of empathy at at the most fundamental level. Even strangers can express empathy to each other. In China, strangers cannot express empathy to each other. Families can, though. Families are very much tight network. Very much well connected. So that's a fundamental misunderstanding of the world about China. China, as a nation, is actually very fragile and very weak. And that's because there's no empathy, the social glue to have everyone together and to think nationally. China very much is a clan-based, family-based society.
Hmm. Well, I'd be glad to try to network together with yourself and other schools, and maybe do some panel discussions around empathy,
Absolutely.
so that that you would be connected to others here talking about empathy.
Absolutely.
And if you
I mean,
saw,
like,
and maybe
I
you
mean,
can
we,
get support. You could get support for lesson
yeah,
plans and activities, something that makes it more explicit. Explicit. It's there's all these processes like active listening, reflective listening, mirroring exercises. There's a lot of things that can be done to kind of explicitly, give lessons into the nature of empathy, and
yeah.
that's kind of like building here now.
Right. I mean, what we do is very special in China. What we do is very distinctive. And, our students in this program love what's happening. They feel better as individuals and as students, and they feel as though they're respected. They feel as though they're empowered in our culture. But the parents themselves are under tremendous pressure because they obviously have different social circles, which tell them like, what is your kid doing? Your kid wants to go to America. Why is he not studying for the SAT right now? Why is he not memorizing words? Why is he reading books and going to Africa to do service learning? What's the point of that? And so, what's really important for us as a school is to connect with other schools that share philosophy, and we really want to be part of a global network, because what we do in China is so challenging. So it's good for our students because it sort of reinforces the values of what we try to teach here. But at the same time, it also broadens the horizons, which leads to greater empathy.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you could be the facilitator for this, help us, put us in touch with other schools. And, I hope very much that in the future, you could arrange for our students to discuss with the students from other schools. I talk about the theory a lot, but I very much would think that you would benefit a lot from talking to our students
Yeah,
who could
absolutely. We can do panel discussions. We can bring in some panel discussions, and they can be recorded as well and put them
yeah.
online.
Would you like to meet one of our students right now
Sure.
so she can discuss with you?
Uh-huh.
And
Sure.
I'll be back.
Okay,
Two
let me
minutes,
turn
okay?
on the lights too. It's getting darker
Okay.
here.
All right. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Yeah. So I've asked a student to join the
Oh,
conversation,
okay, great.
but I feel very strongly that I'm Western educated, and I think that your audience, you yourself, would benefit a lot from talking to one of our students who is not Western educated and who went for the Chinese system and now is in our system.
One thing I like to ask, also, the empathy is often seen as the metaphor is the metaphor of standing in someone else's shoes and looking through someone else's
Sure,
eyes.
that's
And what I
right.
always like to do is ask people, what is your personal metaphor of empathy? So for me, empathy is like a cornucopia. So do you have
Hmm.
if you just from your own imagination, what would empathy be like to you if empathy was, an animal or a type of land or a machine or just anything like that, any kind of a metaphor?
Right. Well, like the image that comes to mind is, I need time to think about this. The first thing that comes to mind is a dolphin, because dolphins are considered, but empathy. That's a very tough question.
Well, you're
Um,
saying empathy is like a dolphin, right? I mean,
well, dolphins are considered to have empathy. I mean, you know, empathy. You know, it's like water. It's like air. It pervades everything that is, and it's fundamental to life. I don't see how society can function um, without air or water empathy. Uh, I mean, I mean, um, I mean, I, I think if you'd ask me what it is, I have to say water. It
mhm.
nourishes us. It's fundamental to who we are. It's fundamentally what we are actually. We're 80% water or whatever. But um, um, it's a source of life. if water is to the individual, then empathy is to society.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how societies can survive without empathy, and and I think that if societies lack empathy, then they slowly degenerate. So yeah. So you asked.
They slowly dehydrate.
Yeah. If you were to ask me for the metaphor, I would say empathy is water.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a great metaphor. So yeah. So yeah, I was asking. I don't recall right off. What was your proposal for the Ashoka contest? What was it that the actual
Yeah,
proposal was?
I mean, like what we try to do here is what we call empathy in practice. So even though we don't articulate it, even though we don't try to sort of indoctrinate our students with it, it is fundamental to everything that we do. Our focus. So
Oh,
we have student focus in our program. That's fundamental to our identity as a school. The first is on reading literature. I want my students to become lifelong readers because reading literature, it's traditionally the best way to teach empathy in schools. I mean, literature, fiction is fundamentally about trying to understand the world through the perspectives of different characters. And writers themselves are individuals with tremendous empathy for themselves and for the community. So reading is so fundamental to what we do, and I think it's so unfortunate that reading has become increasingly irrelevant in schools, not just in China but also in America. Where you have.
oh, excuse me. Your proposal then to Ashoka was kind of your school itself was what you were kind of
That's right.
showcasing, and all the things
That's
that
right.
you're saying this is our proposal that we're putting, and it's our school which is really trying to incorporate empathy within China.
Yeah, empathy cannot be done half-heartedly. You can't have that. You cannot have a class on empathy. It has to be. It's like water. It has to be. It has to pervade everything for it to work. So like the first component is our reading program. Our emphasis on reading and teaching students the love of reading. Second is on the idea of group dynamic, where group dynamic pervades every class, and we try to get our students to learn to work together. Now, to work together is not that easy. I mean, like you just don't put like four people together and says, okay, go do this. I mean, there has to be certain things that are emphasized in group dynamic. For example, self-understanding, the understanding of your own limitations, also the appreciation of other people's strengths and weaknesses. Appreciating that different people bring different things to the table, and appreciating that. Third is to emphasize evidence and logic as a way to debate, and also to offer specific feedback when you're discussing. I mean, in kids, I mean, it's very easy for them. Even adults, it's very easy for a group discussion to generate into sort of I mean, like insults. And just sort of ability to like hold yourself back and to offer specific feedback to ideas that requires empathy. And so what's really important also is that to offer students feedback for what they do. So, I mean, the obvious feedback for reading is that you're reading more. The level of difficulty of what you're reading is increasing, so they feel a sense of accomplishment. But also, group work is very important because at the end of the day, there's something concrete at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to move away from tests and more towards papers, presentations, experiments. We read a lot of books on neuroscience, the brain that changes itself, the accidental mind, ephemeral brain. We read a lot of books that discuss the importance of empathy. So I mean, like that's so empathy is very fundamental to our culture and to our practices.
And how are you going to overcome that vocabulary problem of not having the word? Is it like the word empathy was actually a German word, and it got kind of incorporated into the English. They just you know what I mean. So it's all. But that's quite a long process. I don't know how you would. Oh, you got your student there?
Right.
Okay.
I have a student here.
Okay, great.
Can you just hold on?
Sure.
Grab a chair. So I've asked one of our students to join us.
Oh, great.
This Edwin, and we're just having a
Hi,
Skype conversation.
I'm Edwin.
This is
Hi.
Rebecca.
Oh.
She's one of our grade 11 students.
Oh, great.
And
Hi,
so,
Rebecca.
Hi.
so coming closer. Okay, so Rebecca has been in our program since the first day, and what we're talking about right now, is the word empathy, and how first of all we can't translate the word into Chinese. We've been trying for like many months to translate the word into Chinese. Why can't we translate the word into Chinese? What's the problem?
I think there isn't a word in Chinese that's as broad as that. It has there's small words that sort of means thinking for the other people or like that, but they're not as broad as this word is, and somehow they just don't really fit together.
Well, how about we coin a word? We create a word right now. So the original word for empathy was German, and it meant feeling into someone else. Into it's einfühlen, which is feeling into. So as I sit here and look at you, I feel into your experience. So it would be feeling and into. So what would that be in Chinese? Like we'd need feel and then and into. Is there a couple of Chinese words that like what's feeling?
感觉思考.
感觉 is feeling.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
the problem with empathy is, it's been such a fundamental part of Western civilization that the word itself brings up a lot of connotations.
Oh,
and
just a second. I'm
ideas.
sorry, your image just froze. If you could, sometimes if that happens, if you hit the, oh, there it goes. Okay,
Right.
sorry. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Right. I mean, the problem with the word empathy, and it's why it's so hard to translate, as Rebecca just mentioned, is that the word has been so intrinsic in Western civilization for so long that it automatically brings up connotations and ideas and images that right now don't exist in China. So even if we were to create a word that were to basically capture the essence of it, it still wouldn't have the meaning and the impact that the word has in the English language.
Can we do it as a fun exercise?
All right. What try to come up with a word in Chinese that means empathy or
Okay.
captures the essence of empathy.
And it starts with feeling, and you just said, what was it again? Feeling?
感觉
Gan,
感觉
ganjur.
yeah.
Okay, and into, what is into?
进入
Singwu. Ganja inwu.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, huh?
It doesn't work.
Well, we tried. We tried.
Right. But I mean, Rebecca's one of our students, and I asked Rebecca to join us because I was hoping that maybe that from the perspective of a student, she can share with us, the importance of empathy in our school and how we sort of try to educate students and sort of try to like teach them empathy here.
So, what have you learned about empathy in this school?
So I was thinking about the Botswana trip that we took a month ago in our winter vacation. We went to Botswana. It was the first time for almost all of us in Africa, and I think we went in with a lot of stereotypes, but it turned out to be really different than what we expected. The people there were very nice, and we kept talking on about this point. They greeted each other on the streets. They were very nice to us. So I think, and we also did service learning there. And well, I think just all these added up, and
But
this is really good.
But what specific about service learning that sort of focus on empathy?
We are all us. I think most of us are this single child at our homes. As like, I'm not accustomed to constantly thinking about someone else. like a brother or a sister. I'm feeling okay. She can. I was at a homestay family, and like the girl I was staying with, she had the brother and a sister, a little brother and a little sister. And while we were eating, she was constantly saying, "Don't get too close to the television," or like, "You can't eat with your hands like that." And "Have you washed your hands?" And she was constantly thinking about them. And I felt like, so I never had that experience where I was just worrying about someone else along the time. And during the service learning process, we worked with children that had Down syndromes and some had difficulties expressing themselves. So I was sitting with that one girl who couldn't speak, and we were supposed to draw something, but she had problems grabbing the pen. So we just sat there for half an hour, and so during that half an hour, it was a really long time for me just thinking about what she wants, what she was thinking about. And I think that's probably the longest time I spent just getting into someone other's head and just trying to feel what they're feeling right now. Like she kept looking at the people having lunch over there, and I think she was thirsty. And then I think I asked a teacher there, and like they sort of communicated in a way, and I got her some water. So it was a really different experience for me.
Yeah, so you've grown up in a family where you're the only child, and so you could
Yeah,
just think about yourself all the time. And here
yeah,
you're seeing how other children in large families had to kind of think about each other all the time.
yeah. So I never really had that experience. And I just honestly speaking, I never felt that I lacked that much on that. I had classmates. I felt well. I I made friends and all that. Because I never really felt um, that difference. So that was the time where I really thought I'm lacking a lot of things here, actually.
Oh, so you feel like you're lacking that family, that larger family, or you're just lacking something?
I think
So-
it's lacking just the I think it's lacking the thing that just when you constantly think about someone else, just constantly being aware that there are other people around you. And when I'm at home, then there's just me,
Uh-huh.
and it's just very easily just to think about yourself and just kind of forget the rest of the world or something.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I'll make a larger point, which is, in my experience, Chinese students have very limited experiences. They go to school, they go home. That's about it. They don't date, they don't work, they don't have real interests outside school. And so because their experience is limited, their emotional range is also limited, and that hinders development of empathy.
Well, for me, one part of empathy is kind of feeling into someone else's experience, and it sounded like you were feeling into the experience of the people that were there, kind of feeling what it's like to be thinking about your brothers and sisters. And I'm just curious, who did you feel the most closest to when you were there?
Excuse me, can you
Uh,
repeat that question?
who did you feel the closest? Did you feel having the closest feeling to, kind of the closest emotional feeling?
I think it was the girl I stayed with in the homestay family. Yeah, I stayed there for one night, and uh, it was is we got a lot of time just to talk to each other. We talked very late into the night, so we got a lot of time to get to know each other, and I got to know her family. She heard about mine.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, we're looking at how we were just talking about how we can perhaps network with others, other schools, maybe here in the United States, to actually kind of talk about empathy and looking at different ways to deepen empathy and to build what I call a culture of empathy. So, how do we create an environment that's kind of supportive of people connecting and seeing seeing the world through each other's eyes. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, please make the introduction. If possible. We have video facilities, Skype, but also video conferencing. So, and like if they would want to visit China, then we would love to host them. We have some students coming in from Thailand on Sunday to spend a week with us, and it's an opportunity for us to expose our students to different perspectives, and so we are very well much equipped to host schools, and our schools would love to visit other countries as well.
So you're really open for connecting with other
That's right.
with other schools. So I'll do what I can then to kind of see if I can facilitate that. And I think our next step will be maybe a panel discussion. We can have some teachers, and are you a teacher or administrator there? Or I'm not sure what your role is.
I I run the national division.
Oh, okay.
So I'm an administrator, but also teach as as well. So here, we don't really clarify roles and responsibilities. We see ourselves as a community. So everyone has responsibility to help contribute. And that also fosters a culture of empathy. So, Rebecca is my teaching assistant in an English class. And she also works, in a student council. So, she also has different roles and responsibilities.
Oh, okay.
So, we try to sort of, flatten the hierarchy. We try to we try to basically get rid of boundaries and try to create a community of what we call learners.
I have had a little bit of bronchitis last couple months, so I'm sorry about coughing a little bit here. So I think we'll kind of bring it to a close. We've been at it for about an hour, but we'll keep that in mind as the next thing. Is I'll try to get some other people who are in the schools, and we'll see about doing a panel discussion around this. And
yeah, that sounds terrific.
Then just keep kind of building on it. I'm really excited. Because this is kind of the first connection I've had to China, around this project, and so this is really great for me. I'm just really enjoying it.
Empathy is completely new in China. We're doing our best to sort of promote it, but it is an uphill battle. So whatever allies we can find in the process, we're very grateful.
Okay, well then we'll end it there, and we'll kind of communicate via email about the next steps then. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about your project.
I appreciate you organizing this and helping us link with other people.
Okay, my pleasure. So goodbye. What was your name again?
Thank you. Rebecca.
Rebecca, and you'll have to pronounce yours again. Sorry.
Jiang Xueqin.
Jiang Xueqin.
Jiang Xueqin.
Jiang Xueqin. Sorry.
Fine,
doing my best. Okay, goodbye then. Till the next time.
Thank you so much, Edwin. Okay, bye-bye.
See the world through other people's eyes. Empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.